Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel, or welcome if you are new. In this video, I'm going to be testing out a foundation that has gone viral on TikTok and basically all over the internet, and that is the L'Oreal Infallible 24-Hour Fresh Wear Foundation in a powder. Now, I only tend to use liquid foundation, so I'm really not sure how this is going to work on my skin, but I'm going to give it a try. I'm going to wear it all day and then update you later on this evening with my final thoughts. Now, just for reference, I have combination oily skin, and apparently this foundation is really good for oily skin. So I'm going to put that to the test today and then let you know my final thoughts later on. Now, according to their website, this is a one-step foundation in a powder that gives you the lasting coverage of a liquid foundation, yet mattifies like a powder for flawless skin that looks fresh hour after hour. And it's a long wear powder that stays put all day with up to 24-hour wear. And I believe this particular foundation comes in 16 shades, which isn't the most diverse anyway, but in the UK, I think they only have 6 shades available. I bought this from Boots online and it cost £12.99. When I bought it, there actually wasn't many shades to choose from out of those 6, so it really was quite difficult to try and guess my nearest shade. But I went for shade 140 Golden Beige, so it looks, I mean, if I put it against my neck, because I've actually got fake tan on, it still looks quite dark for me, but then the one shade down from that they had available looked a bit too light. So I just went for this one and let's see how it goes. L'Oreal also makes some very bold claims with this. They claim that it's water, sweat, and heat resistant. In terms of the water resistant, I will actually try that a little bit later on in the video. I'll just spritz my face with a little bit of water just to see how it holds up. Sweat resistant, I mean, I'm not really doing too much today, so it probably won't get the full effect for that. And in terms of it being heat resistant, I live in the UK, it's not very hot, so I'm probably not going to get the most out of that either, but I will definitely put the water resistant part to the test later on in the video just to see how it holds up. I probably should have taken the seal off first. And this is what it looks like inside. And then underneath there is a mirror and also a sponge as well. So I'm going to use this with the sponge that it comes with just to test the product as a whole, and let's just see how I got on with it. I have already prepped my skin this morning, so I cleansed and then I've used the Primark facial serum and also the Daily Defense moisturizer with SPF. Now at the moment I am in the process of testing all of their Futures Bright skincare range, and that video will actually already be up before this one. So if you want to see what I think of their skincare products, then I will leave a link to that in the description so you can have a watch of that too. But this is what I've applied on my face already, and that is it. But I am going to test this with and without a primer. So I'm going to apply it to one half with a primer and one half without, just to see how the two compare. So firstly, I'm going to put my hair back with my headband. Okay, headband is on. This is also from Primark, but I bought it like over a year ago, so I'm not sure that they still have these ones, but it's pretty cute. It's like a little unicorn. So like I say, I have already prepped my skin with my skincare. I will also apply a primer to one half of my face, and I'm going to go with the Revolution Beam Dream Primer, just because I'm not sure how a powder foundation is going to look on my skin. I usually like my foundation to look quite glowy, so I thought I would use a glow primer just to see if it makes any difference at all. I'm going to start by applying the primer, and I'm going to apply the primer to this half of my face. I'm actually just going to apply this with my fingers. It also has kind of like a pinky undertone to it. I mean, the first time I tried it, I was like, oh my goodness. In fact, I have actually tried this in a video as well, so if you want to see my full review on what this primer is like, I will leave that in the description box for you to have a look at. But the pink definitely blends out better once you actually apply some foundation over the top. And also with my skincare, it's probably been on my face for about an hour already, so it has sunk in quite a lot. I don't know if you can see the difference of like the pink and not pink. And I will also actually zoom you in a bit so you can see my skin up close. My skin right now isn't great. As you can see, I've got a lot of blemishes, which is actually quite normal for me, but it is a little bit more than normal. And you can also see my pores and everything. So apparently this foundation is meant to cover your pores and make it seem like flawless. I'm not sure how well it's going to work on me, but we will give it a try. I'm going to let the primer sink into my skin, and I'm going to apply the foundation to the other half of my face first. And like I say, I'm going to use the sponge that comes with it. Once again, this is what it looks like inside. I'm gonna try a little bit on my finger first. They are clean. Ooh. Oh, I don't know about this colour. The colour looks extremely dark, but it does feel like a really nice kind of buttery texture. It definitely has like a perfume scent. It's not bad, but if your skin is kind of sensitive to that kind of thing, then maybe it won't be the best one for you. I'm not sure about that colour though. That does not give me much hope. Oh my goodness. Okay, let's apply it to this half first. Oh my god, that colour, are you sure? Okay, this is gonna need a lot of blending. Oh my goodness. Can I get any of this off? This colour. I mean, I knew it wasn't gonna match, but my god. In terms of like the videos that I've seen from other people, when they've done that first swipe, it's like, it covers everything. So far I'm not getting that same vibe. This is definitely a drag down the neck type of situation. It doesn't help that the colour match is so off, and also there just wasn't many colours to choose from. Like I say, I think they only sell 6 of the shades here in the UK, which is just madness. And then I thought the shade that they had below this was going to be too light, but maybe not. It's kind of clung to these blemishes here. I haven't really noticed that with anyone else, but then I also haven't really seen anyone test it who has skin like mine, where they have lots of blemishes, so there's, I guess, been less to cover. The colour just does not match me at all, which is a real disappointment because that kind of changes my opinion on it already, and I haven't even like properly tested this yet. So I'm trying not to let the colour take away from my opinion of how it actually looks and wears throughout the day. Actually, in person, it doesn't look too bad. It is very dark and it isn't my shade, but I will continue and obviously wear it throughout the day just to give you my opinion on how the foundation wears as a whole, just ignoring the colour of it. First impression so far, it feels kind of dry on my skin, not like dry skin, but the product itself feels quite dry. Whereas if you use a liquid foundation and you touch your skin before you apply your powder, it kind of feels a little bit wet almost. This definitely doesn't do that. It feels very dry and almost like just my skin. Just on that first application, I don't feel like it's covered my blemishes as well as I'd hoped. I'm kind of reluctant to go in with any more product just in case it makes it way too dark. Okay, I'm gonna try a tiny bit more just on this area here, just to see if it can cover at all. I'm hoping that throughout the day my natural oils will make this look a little bit less matte, but we will see. So that is with a little bit more product, and to be honest, it still hasn't really covered them at all. I don't really want to go in with any more because I feel like it's just gonna build up too much and just look way too dark. But my skin does feel completely dry. So what I'm gonna do now is move on to this half of my face and just see how it compares with the primer underneath. This colour, oh my god. So far, I'm really not liking this foundation, which is really disappointing because obviously it went viral online and I've seen so many people rate it really highly. I'm trying to look past the colour of it and just base my opinion on the product itself. I'm really disappointed so far. On their website, it does say to finish with a foundation brush for a flawless look. I'm not going to apply any product to it. I'm just kind of going to blend it a little bit more and see how that looks. Alright, that is all of the foundation on and blended with a foundation brush. Honestly, my thoughts so far, I'm really not liking it. It has made my skin look so dry, which is weird for me because I don't usually have dry skin. So the fact that it looks and feels quite dry is quite strange to me. I'm just not used to that. I'm not sure if I'm liking the mattified look. I'm hoping that throughout the day my natural oils will come through and make it just look a little bit less mattified because it looks very flat, I think, as it is. So colour aside, I'm really not sure that I like this foundation so far. I've used 1 to 2 sort of swipes of the product on each side of my face and I don't feel like it has built very well. It looks quite patchy in places, which, like I say, for me is quite strange because I don't have dry skin, but I feel like it's kind of clung to certain areas of my face, which is strange. As you can see, it hasn't really covered my blemishes very well at all. A lot of people said that it does hide your pores. It definitely hasn't for me. I'll zoom you in. You can still very much see my pores. It hasn't blurred anything. This is my skin up close. So far, just based on that first application, I'm really not impressed with it. It has clung to places on my skin that I didn't even think were dry, and I feel like it looks really patchy. It's kind of clung to certain areas and it hasn't blended that well. And I also don't really notice a difference on either side with the primer and without, so I don't really think that makes much of a difference, but we will see if it makes a difference in how well the foundation lasts. But so far, I'm really not liking this foundation at all, but I will see what it's like once I've put the rest of my makeup on top and just see if it kind of comes together a bit better then. But right now, just based on the foundation application alone, I'm really not a fan. So what I'm going to do is apply the rest of my makeup off camera and then I'll come back and show you how everything looks. Okay, so I've just finished the rest of my makeup and thankfully I think I've managed to salvage it a little bit. So obviously the colour is still way too dark for me and there's not a lot I could do about that. However, as my concealer is quite light, I was able to kind of brighten my face a little bit, and I don't think it looks as dark as it did, but it still doesn't look great. It still looks a little bit patchy, especially on my forehead. But now that I've finished the rest of my makeup, it does look better than it did at the start, although I'm still not 100% convinced. convinced. It doesn't look as bad as it did, I do have to say, and with everything else on top it has worked quite well. I would say that my blemishes were quite difficult to conceal at first because it kind of felt like it was rubbing off the foundation at the same time, and I applied it with a beauty blender just as I always do. I find that the concealer, I use the Revolution Conceal and Define. I find that it works a lot better with liquid foundation, it kind of blends easier, but over the top of the powder foundation it was more difficult to blend, and I felt like it was just dragging off the foundation as well, so I kind of had to apply a bit more of this than I usually would just to conceal as much as I could. But in fairness, now that it's completed, it doesn't look as bad as I first thought it was going to. Just gonna zoom you in again so you can see my skin up close. Although it is a full coverage foundation, it hasn't given me as much coverage as I would usually go for. You can still see my pores. I know some people said it made them look airbrushed. To me, it definitely doesn't. And I think it still looks a little bit patchy on my forehead. So I'm gonna see how it wears throughout the day and then update you later on. The time is currently 2:31 p.m. and I'm gonna continue to wear this throughout the rest of the day. And then later on, I will do the wear test. So I will update you on how well it's lasted. I will also do a water test. I'm gonna spritz a little bit of water onto my face just to see if it is water resistant like L'Oreal claim it is, and then I'm also going to give you my final thoughts and review as well. But this is how it looks with all of the rest of my makeup on top, and it doesn't look as bad as I first thought, so I'm going to give it another chance and then update you later on with my final thoughts. Okay, so this makeup has now been on for 9 hours and I'm very much ready to take it off. As you can see, I have become very oily throughout the day, which is quite normal for me. I do have combination oily skin, but this is what my skin looks like without any touch-ups throughout the day. Normally I would apply a powder or something, but I've purposely left it without anything just to see how it wears, and it has become very oily. I know a lot of people use their liquid products like concealer before applying a powder foundation, and to be honest, I actually forgot because I'm so used to applying a liquid foundation. So I ended up applying the concealer afterwards, but actually it turned out pretty well. It hasn't gone cakey or anything, which is great. Plus I did set it with a Laura Mercier translucent powder and it was absolutely fine, but it isn't as good as I was hoping / expecting. I'd seen a lot of really amazing reviews on YouTube and on TikTok, and to be honest, it didn't work as well as it did for me as I'd hoped it would. I'm also not sure if it's gotten darker throughout the day or if it's just my imagination, but I feel like it looks darker than when I first applied it. So obviously that's not good, but I would say that the coverage has lasted pretty well. I haven't really found that much of it has transferred. That is one of the claims that they made, and I do have to say that it is pretty good in that sense. I think it's only slightly come off the sides of my nose, which I will show you in just one second, but this is what it looks like without any touch-ups throughout the day. So my natural oiliness has come through, and to be honest, I actually prefer the way it looks now, kind of, than the way it did to begin with. When I first applied the foundation, my face looked a bit flat until I used the concealer and it kind of brightened it up a little bit and also helped with the shade situation. But I like the way it looks more with the natural oils coming through. It does look a little bit too oily, I would say, for me. So I would have already applied powder by now, which I am going to test as well. I'm going to apply some powder to the same side of my face that I applied the primer with just to see how it reacts to that. But all in all, I actually do prefer it now to when I first applied it. At first, I was just like, this is not for me, but I still wouldn't rush to go and repurchase it, especially with their current shade range, because it's just not diverse enough and it's really hard to find a shade that matches you, and I can only imagine that it's even harder for people with darker skin to find a shade that matches them. So they really need to up their game with their shades. But in terms of the product as a whole, without looking at the color of it, it hasn't done too badly. I'm going to zoom you in so you can see up close. You can see the pores around my nose area here, and that kind of looks the same as it did when I first applied it. It hasn't really worn that much around my mouth, which is good. It has gone a little bit patchy here, just where it was quite difficult to cover up those spots. I feel like it has sunk into my fine lines on my forehead quite a lot, and it does still look quite patchy. I don't know how well you can see that, especially like here. And it also went a little bit patchy around here, around these blemishes. Now, I don't know if that's because I applied the foundation before the concealer. I think that may be why it was slightly harder to cover my blemishes, because it kind of felt like it was dragging the foundation off, and that may be because I was trying to put a liquid over the top of a powder. So just bear that in mind if you do have skin similar to mine, that it might be worth trying to put your concealer on first. But in terms of like my under eyes and brightening up my face, it did actually work quite well over the top of the powder. Now, as promised, I did say I was going to do a water test. So I've got some water here in a little spray bottle, and I am going to spray it onto one side of my face. I think I'm going to do the side without the primer, just because I'm then going to do the powder test on this side in just a second. Now, I don't know how well it's going to work considering my skin is quite oily as it is. So this is just some plain water. I'm going to put a bit more on. I'm almost struggling to see it. I don't know if that's because of the oil on my face or if it just didn't come out that well. Let's try a bit more. I don't know how well you can see this, but the little droplets of water are kind of sat on the top of my skin. If I dab it, the water comes off, but not the foundation. The foundation seems pretty much intact underneath, so I would say that their claim of it being water resistant is pretty accurate. I'm just gonna leave that side of my face to dry on its own, and I'm gonna apply some powder to this half of my face. And just like I did this afternoon, I'm gonna apply some Laura Mercier translucent powder. I'm just interested to know how a powder foundation would react to more powder later on in the day, because I'm used to wearing, like I say, a liquid foundation, and powder normally isn't an issue when I touch up. So let's just have a look. Just did the one half of my face just so you can see a difference, and it's actually gone on really nicely over the top. So my face is still a little bit wet this side, but you can definitely tell the difference between the two sides, and it hasn't made it go cakey or anything, which is what I was a little bit worried about. So I feel like this foundation would be good enough to use a powder throughout the day to do any touch-ups, especially if you have more oily skin, as it hasn't really affected how it looks at all. Obviously it does make it look a bit more mattified again, but even so it still looks more glowy than it did when I first applied it. I would say it actually does work pretty well, and this has changed my opinion a lot. At first I was really unsure on the foundation. I know the colour kind of threw me off a little bit, but I was just a little bit unsure on the texture and the fact that it wasn't blending very well. But actually with all of the other products over the top, it has worn really nicely throughout the day, and considering we're 9 hours in without any touch-ups minus what I just did there, it does look pretty good, and even with the touch-up it does kind of like freshen it up a bit, so my opinion has gone up slightly. So in terms of my final thoughts and overall review of this foundation, I at first really wasn't sure at all, but gradually throughout the day my opinion has improved, and I'm glad that I gave it a try. Originally I was thinking that I wouldn't repurchase it because I didn't like how it applied on my skin. It went quite patchy, and it didn't originally give me the coverage that I prefer that I get with my liquid foundation, as it was a little bit hard to blend and it kind of stuck on my skin where I first applied it. But having said that, since applying all of the other products on top and letting it last throughout the day, it has grown on me, and it actually doesn't look as bad as I first thought it did. This foundation doesn't feel heavy at all on the skin, which is great for an everyday use, and I would continue to wear this for filming days. I probably wouldn't wear it out just because it doesn't match, so if they were to increase their shade range and make it more diverse, then I could potentially find a shade more suitable for me, and I would consider repurchasing that and giving that a try. But not including the colour of this foundation, I do have to say I have been pretty impressed with it, and I would probably rate this a 7 out of 10. So thank you all so much for watching this video. I hope you found it useful. If you did, make sure you give it a thumbs up, and also don't forget to subscribe to my channel. Also leave a comment down below and let me know if you've ever tried this foundation and how you got on with it, because I'm interested to know how it works for other people. But yeah, thank you all so much for watching, and I will see you in my next video.